All right, welcome you guys. We're live. Welcome to the Dr. G Show. This is episode 185, and we are doing our third installment on COVID. So last week, or a couple weeks ago, we talked about kind of a recap on COVID. You know, we did this talk last year, almost a year ago. And so we talked about kind of COVID and a little bit of update. We also kind of reiterated some of the old school stuff that we talked about last year. And then the second show that we did, which was 2 weeks ago, we talked about, or actually last week, we talked about the vaccine and its efficacy, and we talked about how Pfizer did their study. Now, there was a little change on there. It was pointed out that I was wrong. It wasn't 8 people that got the vaccine. It was 8 people who got the vaccine had severe symptoms. So, that being said, I want to make sure to correct that. I hate when I'm wrong. I read that thing like 20 times and I was wrong. So, it's all right. So, tonight, on episode 185, this is our third installment of COVID. So, what we want to do this time is Angela Mitchell asked a little bit about why we lose our sense of smell with COVID. Like, why is that a thing? And so I did a little research and found the answer. So then she wanted to, the question becomes, how long does it last? And what are we going to do to fix it, right? So the other thing that lots of people had questions on was, what can you do holistically or naturally to kind of help with that? So, Chelsea, what does that mean? She said, shall we do this year in COVID? Or what should we do this year? Chelsea, I feel like there's more of a question there. So let's get into this. So we have a couple things. We talked about how kind of viruses work last time, and maybe touched on that a couple weeks ago too. So we'll reiterate about that. So let's start with the whole reason COVID people often lose their sense of smell. So, with the new variants, so we have 3 or 4 new variants that are coming out. Now, actually, there's hundreds of variants, obviously, with every time you get infected with a viral infection like cold or flu or any of the 200 viruses that do that, there's very specific receptors by which they bind to. And then every time they are able to evade your immune system, they modify just a little bit, right? So, like, imagine, if we were in war, like, if you guys remember the Predator. So, what did he do when he landed in the mud to try to mask the thermal scanning of the Predator, right? He caked himself with mud. Arnold Schwarzenegger did. If you haven't seen that movie, you need to see that movie. It's all about the virus. So, he did this to outwit the Predator's ability to detect, right? So that's what viruses do. So if the virus can figure out a way that your immune system is identifying it and then, of course, beating it, it's going to modify. And as it survives and then you cough and you spray it out, it's going to go into someone else's nose, embed in their lungs or pharynx or in their nose, and now it's better. And then it's going to figure out how to outwit that person's immune system. And then they're going to breathe on someone else. And then it goes on and on and on until we create a super change. And when we create a super change, now all of a sudden it's a different type of coronavirus mutation that is more virulent, right? So that's the only real concern with any of these viral changes. All viruses do this, right? That's their only job. They're not alive. There's just some weird thing where they try to just survive and evolve. So, with the COVID mutations that are coming out of like South Africa and it was Brazil and I mean, ours came from England that we got in the U.S., and I think there's a new mutation in California that's supposed to be more virulent. And so then, we're like, well, the vaccine may not work, which it may not, right? Once a medication is developed, that trickery or that mechanism by which it's going to work can't change. That's the whole nature of medication. You take something that's constantly evolving in nature, you synthesize that, add a little something extra to it, patent it, and it cannot change because your patent prevents that. So that's why we see national resistance to antibiotics and vaccines within 5 years. We see global in 7 years. So we talked about that before. So when you look at some of the new mutations that are coming out, they're adhering to the nasal area even better. So anytime you breathe stuff in, so we're breathing in, we have, I think, 6 liters of air in our lungs, but you only breathe out like, I think it's like 20 ounces with each breath, right? Now, over the course of a whole day, ends up being like, I forget, I said it in one of the, I think last week, but it's like maybe 1.5 million milliliters of air that we breathe out within, say, a day. So all that air goes out everywhere. It lands on all the surfaces, and then it's there for a couple days like we talked about before. So if you touch it, and then you touch your nose, or you touch it, you mess with your ear, touch it, mess with your eye, well, now that becomes the breathing zone there. With the ear, it's kind of a closed system. So they were saying that in the beginning of COVID, and even during this, your ear is a harbor for coronavirus. So you mess with your ear, and then you get a taste. One time my daughter said, we were watching a movie, and she said, here, Dad, taste this. And so I tasted what was on her finger, and she said, you like my ear flavor? And so she made me eat her earwax, which is gross. So, you spread stuff all over all the time, right? So then we're like, oh, you're supposed to wear gloves, but now you're just spreading stuff with gloves, right? Unless you do this and then take off the glove, wash your hands, I put on some new gloves, oh, I touched my eye, right? The first time I went into surgery rounds, Dr. Grusin was like, you're a doctor, nobody needs to know you've never done surgery, you just scrub in and you just do your thing, they'll all address you as doctor and nobody will be the wiser. And I was just like, pretty sure they're going to be the wiser, right? So I scrub in, I gown up, and then I'm sweating profusely because I'm so going to get busted. And then my glasses start slipping off, so I go, boom, like that. And the OR nurse yells out, he's not sterile! And then it all came to a close. So everybody had it figured out by then. So, horribly embarrassing. But the reason we do that in surgery, or did that kind of stuff in surgery, is because you can't touch anything or you're contaminated, right? There's always, here's dirty, here's sterile in the OR. So if we treated stuff like that outside with the virus, every time you touch a tabletop, you gotta go scrub your hands. You turn off the faucet, now you gotta scrub your hands. You turn off the light switch, now you gotta go scrub your hands, right? And they had a great video about this, about spreading COVID. Like everywhere this person touched was COVID, COVID. And then there was a great video where someone was just washing all the time. And they could not make it out of the bathroom because they were just non-stop washing and trying to not touch anything. So you're going to have these harbors anyways. So you better have great barriers, which we'll talk about in a little bit, and a strong immune system, which we'll talk about in just a little bit. So when you look at even getting in the eye, someone breathes on you, get it in your eye, that goes through the lacrimal gland, lacrimal duct here, tear duct, and then that goes into the upper part of your nose, and then goes back down your throat or out the front. So when you cry, the reason your nose is runny is because all those tears made in this lacrimal gland are now going across to clean your eyelids, and then you're sitting there like windshield wipers, pushing it down in that little gland or duct, and then it goes down into your nose, and then you cry, right? So get your heart broken, get a little runny nose from that. That's how it's supposed to work. And then that also helps flush out bad stuff. So with the new variants, they are able to attach a little bit better to mucosal areas. So when you breathe in, even if you're wearing a mask, so we talked about this before, you wear an N95 mask, it is not down to small enough webbing to prevent a 0.1 micron virus, okay? So it's like a chain link fence trying to get rid of mosquitoes. It's not going to work real well. So last week we talked a lot about that research from the CDC, from the NIH, from the World Health Organization. They were standards until everybody flip-flopped. So we're not going to get back on that. But if you end up getting it in your nose, the reason coronavirus or COVID 2019, COVID-2, the reason that this one is so harmful, especially to people with hypertension, high blood pressure, breathing problems, emphysema, is because it attaches to the ACE receptors. So for a virus to go from an animal to a human, it has to find a cell that's similar so it can attach. So we talked about that before. So the cells that it attaches to are the ACE receptors. So angiotensin converting enzyme receptors. That's what regulates your blood pressure through your lung. So if you have blood pressure problems and now you have an infection in the lungs on those receptors, now there's a big problem. Now in the nose, that's okay. So wait. So Linda Bay says, Linda Bay, is that right? That sounds southern. She says, is that why some double mask? Well, double masking is like taking two chain link fences and putting them together. The other thing is, the more that barrier that you create, like you can put more and more chain link fences, and then you blow, and it will go all the way around. All that air has to leave, right? So the stronger, more forceful you breathe with more mass or more dense mass, the harder you're propelling that breath forward. So double mask is really just, I mean, again, we're just always hitting the bullseye on the wrong target, right? I mean, that's, first they were just like, the Asians, they mask, that's why their stuff's under control and their economy's back. But we have to double mask, right? And turn off the air conditioner, and wear goggles, and earplugs, and gloves. But they didn't have to do it, right? So, which is interesting because there's a big stark difference between Asians and well, I think it was Caucasians, so we'll just call it white people, white folks. There's a big difference between who ends up losing smell when they get COVID. So that's kind of interesting. But also, we see lots of more problems for comorbidities from Americans and Europeans, but more Americans because the obesity and the diabetes and all the complications for that. So when we think about this attaching to your nose, because it wasn't like this all the way in the beginning. So as they get more virulent, right, they change and modify, then they try to find how to attach to those receptors even stronger and evade your immune system. So, Linda says, Facebook wouldn't let me have B for a name. What's up with that? That seems insectophobia. So, in my research, found out that I knew ACE receptors were in the lungs, but my assumption was there must be also in your nose and your pharynx, your upper throat back here where they're jamming that thing up. Unless you want to do the anal swab, that's a new thing. So if the coronavirus comes in, attaches to you, now again, 100% of people will get exposed to corona. Just like the flu every year. Not everybody will get sick, and only very few will actually die. Same as flu, same as cold, same every year. Alright? So, it's not if you're going to get corona, it's eventually you're going to get corona. So, there's other coronas, and you've been exposed to those too. So, if that has ACE receptors in your nasal area, so when you breathe in molecules, they go up your nose, they embed in the mucus, they have to go through the mucus, trigger a cell called, I believe it's a hair cell. It's not the same as the hair, right? But then that triggers I think a bipolar neuron. Again, not bipolar like crazy or something, but it goes to the rhinencephalon. So right here where your eyebrows are, the part of your brain is called the rhinencephalon. Rhine means nose. And so this is the part of your brain that detects smells. So you have to have the molecule enter, go through the mucus, trigger that cell has to communicate, and then you have an actual sensation, right? So if somebody farts on an elevator and you can smell the fart, then particles from that person's anus are now in your face. Now, you can double mask, right? Underwear and jeans, and you're going to still smell that fart. You know why? Because particles from their anus are just pushing right through that denim and that underwear, and then going through the air, and then drifting around, and then the aroma of fermented corn, right? So those particles are always going to end up eventually into you. You better have a hell of a good immune system. But if that's coronavirus instead of farts, then it will go into there and it'll bind to that receptor. Now, it binds to the ACE receptor in your nose. So there's these cells called, let me read it. It's odd to me. Okay. Sustentacular. That attaches to the can't do it. It attaches to the sustentacular cells. I feel like that's like fantastic, meaningful information. Like it's like spectacular substance, right? Like you meet someone and like on Facebook all the time, like I go through people's posts and then I'm just like, that person really has some meaningful posts, right? That's substantacular. I don't know. So, substantacular. Those cells then become impaired with the coronavirus. That impairment then alters the way that you can smell now. So it actually damages the sustentacular cells. And then eventually, if you have enough of this, then you can't smell stuff. If you can't smell stuff, you can't taste stuff, right? My mama was always like, you're going to eat everything on your plate, boy. And I was like, the hell I am. And then, of course, she would make me. So I'd hold my nose, and then I'd eat my broccoli, and I couldn't taste it, right? So I don't know if you know this, but if you hold your nose, you can't taste. So it has to have air molecules flowing through that over that food, and then that food aromatic molecules touching those sustentacular cells. I want a t-shirt. I want a t-shirt that says I'm sustentacular. I think that'd be great. Instead of Psycho Bunny, where's my shirt? Psycho Bunny, sustentacular. See, Shauna's the right direction. They're spectacular. So that's why. And so the question then becomes, so that's the underlying mechanism. Now, there's a lot of research out there still that's just like, we don't know. But that's the clearest data that we have that's published that really explains the pathophysiology of that. So that's why coronavirus targets ACE receptors, and then that affects the sustentacular cells, which then prevents you from sending that information to the rhinencephalon, and then you can't smell stuff, right? So, how long does it last? Well, it's going to last typically as long as it takes to regenerate those cells. And every cell in your body regenerates, so every 10 years you're a whole different human being. Most cells turn over daily. Taste buds are usually, I think, a couple weeks. But about the sustentacular regeneration, you're looking at an average of like maybe 3 weeks, right? So, for some people, they get their taste back within a couple weeks. Some people 3 weeks. But if you're still having the exposure to COVID and it's still causing that damage, then it may be a prolonged effect. So one question for you guys is, have you lost your sense of smell to COVID? And how long did it take before that came back? So I haven't noticed any of that yet, but I've had several patients that come in that have lost their sense of smell. And so, should be about 21 days to get that back. Now, the other part to this is, you are going to be re-exposed over and over and over. We have this weird idea about viral infections. Like it's on or off, right? And, years ago, like what we learned in graduate school is like in virology, and I used to teach virology and anatomy and physiology and immunology and stuff, and we never taught it quite the right way. It's this germ theory kind of way that's like, you get flu if you get exposed to flu. That's not true. Everybody gets exposed to flu, but most people will have barriers that prevent that flu from ever reaching our own cells. And if it doesn't reach our own cells, we don't have to fight off crap, right? Harvard says there's 750 to 1,000 species of bacteria that live in you and on you. It creates this coating of bacteria on you. And guess what has to get through this giant coat of bacteria to even make you attack something? And that's bacteria and viruses, right? So, if somebody coughs on you directly or is breathing on you, right? I have a ton of good bacteria, so I would not expect me to have much problem. I haven't been really sick for probably 8 years, maybe. Like 8 years I got really sick, but I was super stressed, eating crap, in a horrible relationship, and yeah, I should have got sick. And I did. I got really, really sick. Now, I looked healthy. I was preaching health. But the reality is my relationship was not good. And it took a toll. And I would eat my fillings. And, that's going to suppress your immune system. So that's what should happen. You should get really sick. And that's what most people do, right? Since then, it's been, I think 3 years ago, I got sick on Valentine's Day, and we didn't go to George's, and then she was upset, but she stayed and made me soup and took care of me. So that was like just kind of cold stuff, right? Just a simple little thing. So we want lots and lots of copious bacteria all over us. And then the other thing is you want tons of mucus. Now, think about this. The average woman in America, shrinks 2 to 4 inches between the ages 40 and 60. So when we see grandma shrink, it is not her bones shrinking. It's all the fluid spaces drying up in between all those vertebrae and all the knees and ankles and all that, right? So until they get linear shortage from that dehydration. But long before that, it's dry skin, dry eyes, dry throat, dry vagina, dry hair. It'll suck up every bit of fluid that you're not over drinking. And then eventually it sucks the fluid out of your joints, and then they fuse together, and then you're hunched over and it's a mess, right? So hydration is a big part of your immune system, because you make 10 cups of mucus, 10 cups that drain from your sinuses up here down the back of your throat and into your stomach, and then all that acid in there that's supposed to be in there then kills everything, right? And then it breaks up all the virons and all the viral data and then all the bacteria. And then now your immune system gets to respond to all these broken, defective bacteria and viruses that try to invade you and didn't succeed. So if it gets through all the good bacteria, it hits this big giant mucus trap. But if you're dehydrated, now there's not much mucus being produced. Now my eyes don't have a bunch of nice little glaze of mucus that then takes it out, drops it down to the nose, goes down the back of the throat into your stomach and gets rid of it, right? Now you get corona that binds to those receptors, and then you lose your sense of smell. So one thing when I was looking up this research was, why the hell do Asians fare way better at not having their sense of smell lost than Americans? Like it was, say, this much versus this much, right? Very few Asians were having the loss of smell. And so we didn't even really notice it until it came to America, and it was just like all these Americans were like, I'm losing my sense of smell. And then it was like, is that a thing? Is that a not thing? And we have all these comorbidities. All these people are polypharmacies out the butt. And then now we see any weird side effect, we're like, that's a COVID symptom. Because we're one of the most vulnerable of all the sickest, fattest, dumbest populations on earth. Like, we are the most unhealthy. So we're going to have delayed. We're going to have slower recoveries from these kind of things. We're going to have more lingering things. Because we're Americans. We eat crap, and then we get really sick. And then we are on tons of meds, which then, is it the med? Is it not the med? Is it this? It's the whole thing, right? So, let's see, real quick. Linda says, everybody that she knows got COVID didn't experience that. Just mild cases. Jody says, my whole family was exposed, but we were the only ones that didn't get it. All of them lost their taste of sense and smell. Or taste and smell. 2 of them are still muted in their taste about 5 weeks later. Yeah, so 5 weeks, that's quite a bit longer. But you get exposed all the time, over and over and over again, right? We're not one germ theory. It is just massive amounts of hundreds of viruses that you're exposed to all day, every day. So, you're not getting exposed to COVID. You're getting exposed to 4 different COVIDs and to 4 different flus and 196 other cold viruses, RNA viruses, naked viruses. You know, they're the perverts of the viral industry. You're getting exposed to all those, right? Like I was so baffled on NPR that they had this virologist on there several years ago, and they were talking about this. They were talking about, can you get sick? Can you get a viral infection in isolation? And I was like, that's bullcrap, because I was taught you have to be exposed to someone that has the virus, and that's how you get the virus, right? But it wasn't true. What I learned was not true. So the virologist talked about, if they would put subjects alone in a room and make them watch people getting sick over and over and over. Like every TV show that they're watching, every commercial, all this stuff is people getting colds. Guess what? They got a cold. So is that nocebo effect, right? Placebo is, I believe I'll get better. So hope, right, actually changes my physiology. But there's the nocebo effect. And the nocebo effect says, if I believe I will get worse, I get worse. I change my own physiology to make myself worse. So is this a nocebo effect? And it's not. It is the fact that we have hundreds of viruses all over us and in us waiting for us to become susceptible so they can become active. And I did not know that. And if it wasn't a virologist teaching this, I would have just been like, that's bull crap, right? That's not what I learned in grad school. That's ridiculous, right? But that's the reality. That's the stuff I learned at Harvard that was so impressive, because they taught us all this stuff in the lifestyle medicine program that I'd never heard of. Like, well, this is not the way that we were taught, but it's lifestyle. It's about how the body works, how we mess it up, and then teaching people to stop messing it up. Let's see. So Stephanie says, from Canada, woo woo. They say blood type can make it worse. O type does better than B type. What do you think? Well, I think in America, we like to make things overly complicated. So the fact that there's an antigen, okay, wait. So O type versus B type. So B type has a B antigen on there. Is that right? Or an A? Is it the opposite? I used to teach this. So O doesn't have any antigen. So let's see. O type is doing better than B type. So there's all these theories about blood types and even like what people eat and how this happens or that happens. But I think it's more proof texting. So, and what are you going to do about it? You can't do anything. You can't change blood type, theoretically. So it probably doesn't really matter. It's probably more proof texting. I wouldn't see how an antigen would affect your natural killer cells, interferon, cytotoxic cells, your mucus production. None of that. So it typically becomes a complication. Like, we love the idea of complication affecting those things. Like, I'm not sure why, but it's just the way that we are. So I don't know. I don't know if that's a good answer. It's my way of just not saying bad stuff, I guess. So, I don't know. All right. So, the question then becomes kind of, how do you get your smell back? Well, that's a good question. So someone asked me that question. Angela Mitchell actually asked that question. And then someone posted a thing that she saw. Someone said that this doctor thinks that this would help. But if this is sustentacular cells that are being destroyed, then the only thing that's really going to stimulate that is stem cells. And stem cells are going to be part of a circadian rhythm of replacement within the body. I think the real difference between how quickly somebody might recover from that loss of smell and taste versus someone else is maybe the constant re-exposure of COVID that's going to be constantly fighting that. Now, probably a better way to address that isn't really because they're going to grow. It's going to grow back. Re-exposure is going to be problematic for it. So I guess two things is, one, create a better barrier system. So when it comes to mucus, lots and lots more water. The rate or the formula is half your body weight in ounces of water. So over consuming water when you're in say COVID season or flu season, to make sure that you are constantly making this nasty film to catch everything that gets through your barriers. Don't suppress your stomach acid, right? You need that. If you have reflux, come see someone like me or someone else that it should be gone like that fast. Like it's just caused. It's just sympathetic nerve overstimulation from nitrates and sulfites and MSG and wheat and dairy and handful of things. Get rid of those, reflux goes away. Then you stop getting rid of all your stomach acid. Then you get B12 back, and then B12 binds to intrinsic factor, which is made by the same pump, and then you get to be healthy and happy and energetic, and you get to be like, I'm great, right? Versus the other way, which is really bad. So extra water is really good. Half your body weight in ounces. So that was set in 1910 when the average adult weighed 128 pounds. So half of that's 64. So then we grew up in a generation where everybody's got to get 64 ounces. Kids don't need 64. A 300-pound person doesn't need 64. A 128-pound person needs 64. So half your body weight in ounces of water. If that's a lot, then that's just the way it is. If you got a big pool, you're probably going to want to fill the whole pool up with water. And that's a lot of water. But you got a big pool. That's the way it is. And then things like, okay, so when COVID first came out, there was a living document that was produced. And so all these scientists contributed to this living document from all over the world. And I kind of stayed attuned to it. And one of the things that you don't know is that in other countries, they can literally say Luhan is 100% effective against coronavirus, and it is a standard of treatment, first-line defense for COVID for hospital workers. They can say several different Chinese blends are 100% effective against COVID in hospital primary care settings for frontline hospital workers. It was 100% in all the research, right? They can say that. But in America, you can't say that because the FDA says you cannot treat or diagnose or cure with anything natural. You can't. You can sell supplements that have no active ingredient, and the FDA doesn't give one shit about it. But you say it might help with the cold. Holy crap. Got to get the little what is it? MP5, right? Those little kind of like automatic weapons, right? Bulletproof vest, and then they will like go to places like the Elderberry Farm, south of Wichita, with automatic weapons and bulletproof vests because there's a little tag on the elderberry that says it helps with colds. Now they could put no elderberry in there at all and sell it, and we're cool with that and call it elderberry. But you say it helps with a cold, and now you're facing automatic weapons in your front door. That's insane in America, right? When I was lecturing, I was the keynote speaker at the International Symposium of Health and Wellness, and in Thailand a couple years ago, and Dr. Venki, who is an amazing guy, he was lecturing. He's a medical doctor specialized in homeopathy. So in between lectures and stuff, they were doing a presentation of medical research, and they're presenting their papers. So Dr. Venki, who's a friend of mine, he published 50 papers, or presented 50 papers at these different conferences. And he was saying stuff like, this homeopathic cured this cancer. And they were showing pre and post MRIs. And I was just like, dude, you're going to get your license taken away. You can't be saying that kind of stuff. And over there, you can say that. Because over there, it's like Thai traditional wellness is the goal. The goal is not to get sick. And so literally, he could say stuff that I would lose my license saying here. If I made products here, I would lose that company. I would be in big trouble. So, there's a whole myriad of things on this living document that I was following, that when you pulled the research and looked up the peer-reviewed published research, holy crap, what the hell are we doing? The worst thing is, when this is not our first rodeo when it comes to COVID. It's not our first rodeo when it comes to SARS. That's the absolute weird thing of why all this changed. All these rules on masks changed. Because this is not our first rodeo. It's not our first pandemic. It's not our first SARS. It's not our first COVID. But it's the first time that it became politicized. Which changed things. And again, wear a mask. Don't wear a mask. That's not what I'm here for. Right? So let's talk about a few things as we wrap things up here from that living document. So Stephanie says sacred lung, or scarred lung. What about scarred lung? Now, most of the people with comorbidities, they might have COPD, chronic obstructive pulmonary disease, and then the emphysema, that kind of stuff, or telangiectasia. They might end up with damaged lungs from that, but they probably were already on their way there anyways. Deb just wants to jump to the end of the movie, like what's on the list, right? So we'll talk about that. It's very simple, cheap stuff too, which I love. Let's see. All right. So, what's on? A couple things here. Now, your body does not care what virus it's being attacked by. Viruses behave pretty much the same way, which is why we can use them as biomedical, through biomedical engineering as delivery systems, right? Because the predictability of them. So they attach to a cell, they embed, they deliver like a hypodermic needle their DNA particulates or their virons, and then that changes your DNA to make more of the viral DNA. When your cell decomposes, it releases them, and then they go attach other cells. That's it. That's its only job. Its only job. It doesn't have some master plan or anything else. It's just like, let's stick to the man, right? So, when we talk about how we how we support the immune system, right? Tamiflu, which was the first saving grace, it's just because Tamiflu stimulates arabinoglycan activity, which is how your body actually helps to get rid of viruses. So that was created from the mechanism of star of anise. And star of anise is that black licorice flavor. If you haven't ever, it's what's in ouzo, right? Sunsets in the Greek Isles, you pour a little ouzo, sip it with your friends, watching the sun go down, crystal clear water. That is what they helped, or that's what they used to create Tamiflu. Tamiflu works by stimulating something the body already uses, which is arabinoglycan activity. And that's a kind of glyconutrient sugar process from the stimulates immune system. If you look at something like turmeric. Turmeric was one of the most established on that living document. Turmeric. Cheap ass turmeric if you buy it from the Asian store. If you buy it from the health store, it's like $18 a pound, right? You can get, I don't know, maybe a pound for like $3 at the Asian store. So that cheap ass turmeric was one of the most effective ways to get rid of viral infections, and it was published research for COVID and SARS. SARS is severe acute respiratory syndrome. So these are viruses that went from an animal to a human, and they attack the lungs or upper respiratory to make it difficult to breathe for people that typically had it difficult to breathe. So that's SARS. So out of all the things that we're trying to figure out, here you have a cheap-ass root that is used worldwide, well-published, specifically for SARS, specifically for COVID, and it showed that it decreased viral load by 90%. Let me see if I can quote the journal here. Let's see. Okay, so this one, it was from Biomedical Research International, a review on antibacterial, antiviral, and antifungal activities of curcumin, and it says it's a wider range of antiviral effects. Usually we think about it as a pain reliever, but it had a 90% reduction of viral yield. So that means you're taking the world's deadliest virus and you're able to use a cheap ass supplement to get rid of 90% of the viral yield. Now, what's even better about that is it gets rid of your pain and inflammation too, which is 3 out of every 4 Americans. So that's pretty good. So the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine said the antiviral natural effects in herbal medicine that turmeric is a natural inhibitor of SARS-CoV enzymes. So that means it prevents it from attacking you in the first place. So turmeric becomes not only a great treatment. Can I say that? Can I say that? FDA gonna get me? According to research. There we go. That's how we do it. How I'm not going to lose my license. According to research, published research, peer-reviewed, it's a great preventative, and then it's also going to be a great treatment according to research. So, what dose? Well, there's quite a variety. I would stick to something that's the same kind of therapeutic dose as you would for pain and inflammation. It's a great COX-2 inhibitor, right? And the reason it's one of the most powerful anti-cancer medicines is because of how it works on the immune system non-specifically, right? If it can boost the natural killer cells, interferon, cytotoxic cells, that's what kills cancer. It's also what kills the cells that are infected with viruses. The body doesn't care, right? So, turmeric, maybe 500 milligrams 3 times a day, right? Like if I was around people, like when COVID first started, man, I was doing like 3 times a day, something like that, because I saw patients all the day. And I was just like, I'm not going to get sick from this. That's for show. So, alright, so that's from the Journal of Traditional and Complementary Medicine and from the Journal of Biomedical Research. Now, there's also echinacea. Echinacea is another thing that stimulates the arabinoglycan activity just like Tamiflu does, right? So Tamiflu, you have really interesting sources for this, right? So you have star of anise. Take star of anise, buy it, put it in your chicken noodle soup. Get gluten-free noodles. Put it in your chicken noodle soup and eat that as prevention, but also as a treatment if somebody gets sick with it, right? So that's a great thing. And I don't know, have you guys ever tried star of anise in chicken noodle soup? It is so delicious. Our neighbor who's a nurse practitioner, we're always like, man, her chicken noodle soup is amazing. We couldn't figure out why, and that's why. And then what arabinoglycans do is the Journal of Nutrition and Metabolism, it says, does large arabinoglycans enhance immune function? A review of the mechanistic and clinical trials. So, what they found. Now, this is larch from a larch tree. You get free bark, which boosts your immune system. And no, that's actually true. I think the larch is where they get the Tamiflu from. But it's the same effect as the Chinese star of anise. Because Chinese star of anise is what stimulates the shikiminic acid. That's right. I'm right. Yeah. So Chinese star of anise, shikatimic acid, Tamiflu. And a 2009 University of Maine study, so this is America, right, showed shikiminic acid can be readily harvested from pine needles for pine needle tea. So when I used to go take my twins to elementary school, in front of Walton there was a pine tree, and we would and I watched Bear Grylls, Man vs. Wild, so I'm always like, let's survive. And so I was like, we should make pine needle tea. So we would steal pine needles while we were kind of dicking around after school, and then we would take them home and we would boil up some hot water, and then we put our pine needles in there, and then we would drink our little tea and we'd watch our little cartoons. So pine needle tea is medicine. If you ever go hiking with me, I am constantly pulling off juniper berries and eating them. I'm constantly pulling pine needles off and chewing them up. I'm pulling wild sage off the ground, chewing it up. Nobody else will do that with me. They all think it's too strong and it tastes gross. But man, I'm getting mad medicine when I hike. And I always out hike everybody else. So I don't want to say it's the juniper berries, but I do notice the last couple times my whole lips have been numb for days. But I think that's because I need to start wearing chapstick because we're on top of the mountains. I think that's it. I'm trying not to blame the juniper berries on that. Okay, so pine needle tea, dirt cheap. That 2009 study shows it does the same thing as Star's anise for the same effect as Tamiflu. And then the arabinoglycan activity. So I keep saying that, but what the hell does that mean, right? So in that journal of clinical nutrition and metabolism, it enhances natural killer cells and macrophages and also pro-inflammatory cytokines. So when you do those things, they literally have increased macrophages that go around and eat all the bad bacteria, viruses, of cancer. And then the natural killer cells are the ones that go and inject tainted cells that are loaded with viruses and kill them. And it doesn't just kill them, it'll kill all the cells around it to get rid of that infection even faster. And then human clinical studies showed an increase in body's potential to defend against viral infections and decrease cold episodes by 23%. And it improved antigen-specific IgG and IgE responses to pneumonia bacteria. So that's the what really kills people is not corona, and it's not like cold and flu. It's always that secondary viral or bacterial infection that's what kills people. So things like leeks, radishes, pear, tomato, those are all good sources of that arabinoglycan activity that stimulates the immune system and decreases the viral duration by 23%. Now, echinacea is another easy one that you can add in, right? So echinaceas are a long-established Chinese medicine. And echinacea tea, 6 to 8 ounces, 4 times a day for up to 10 days. The Journal of Pharmaceuticals said that echinacea, a source of a potent antiviral for respiratory viral infections, human and avian viruses, including Tamiflu-resistant strains, including coronavirus. It blocked the hemagglutinin and aramidase, so the viruses cannot attach. So echinacea, so turmeric I love, decreases viral load by 90%. Echinacea not only decreases viral duration by 23%, but it prevents the actual attachment and injection of the viral DNA into your cells. Let's see. So I like that. Again, we're talking about food. We're talking about pine needle tea, like dirt cheap stuff, right? Oh, so Stephanie says, what is star of anise? So it's star of ANIS. So it looks like a little spiky wagon wheel, and it tastes like anise, which is black licorice. So black licorice originally got its flavor from star of anise. Ouzo gets its flavor from anise. So we call it anise if you buy it in the store, but it's actually Chinese star of anise. So it's just a spice, if you will, that you probably have in your cabinet. And then Jody says her doctor told her to take quercetin. Quercetin's really good. That's from apples and onions. Quercetin is a really effective anti-edema, anti-inflammatory. So that's a reasonable thing. One thing you can do if you kind of want to flush your nose and upper respiratory, you can do a couple things like you can do a saltwater flush. So you can, if you have some congestion up in here, you can take warm water, mix it like a teaspoon of salt, mix it up until it's looks pretty dissolved. I stand at the front of the sink, I put it up to my nose, and I would lean back and slowly let it drip down the back of my throat, and then I would put the cup down and just blow everything into the sink, right? So as you have all this mucus coming down, some of it's going to get over-dried, especially overnight. A saltwater flush will get rid of that. Then I gargle the rest of the salt water as low as I can go, and then I spit up all that gross stuff. That's a wonderful way. If you take green wasabi, not horseradish that's dyed green, but real wasabi, you can actually put that in your mouth, and it will flush all this stuff out. So you can just do white horseradish too. If you just take a little bit, like get Bubbies, that's non-toxic, there's no bad stuff, put a little bit, like a pea-sized in your tongue, swish it around, and it will flush all that stuff out too, right? So that's a wonderful way to kind of start the day, get all that stuff out. I love wasabi. I take big bites of that stuff, and I just feel euphoric and like high for a little bit. I'm not sure why. Yeah, Deb says onion skins have quercetin. Isn't that funny? We cut the onion, take the skin off, throw the skin away. We get sick, then we go to the health food store and we buy the skin that we threw away. Grape seeds are antihistamines. We buy grapes without seeds. Then we get allergies and we go to the store and buy the seeds that we threw away or that we got rid of. Isn't that weird? Such a weird thing to me. Okay. The last thing I would probably say is really, really good is vitamin C. So, now vitamin D is good. There's lots of research for that. You know, go out in the sun, stop lowering your cholesterol because vitamin D is cholesterol. But vitamin C, I found, especially when I first started going from being just horribly sick twice a year to only sick once a year, then I didn't get sick one year, and then I was like, holy crap, I'm invincible. I would do this little thing where I would do 5,000 milligrams of vitamin C as a loading dose, first thing in the morning. So if I felt anything that was just like, I might have been exposed to something, you know, I've 17 years, man, I see patients all day long, and some of them are horrifically looking sick. And there's only been one time that it was like, oh, I don't think this is a good idea. But 5,000 milligrams as a loading dose jacks up your natural killer cells, your interferons, your cytotoxic cells, which are the whole premise to identifying and eliminating infected cells so you stop spreading the virus to your other cells, let alone to other people. But 5,000 milligrams as a loading dose, and then I would do 1,000 per waking hour, which is a lot of vitamin C. And so that's where sometimes people would be like, oh, I'll take some vitamin C. They take 1,000. That's probably not really going to do much for you, right? There's a difference between preventing scurvy, being healthier, more energetic, repairing, you know, and then not getting sick or something, or overcoming a viral infection. Same thing with the zinc studies. Oddly enough, when COVID first started, there was this question about, like, should we take zinc? And the zinc studies are not what we take. I mean, all the stuff that they showed with zinc is not what you're taking as a supplement. What you're taking as a supplement is 25, 50 milligrams. That's enough to get from basic food that you eat. Like, that's nothing. It's more of a gimmick. So that becomes a frustration. So vitamin C, really, really heavy dose, is really good. You don't want to do silver if you think it's viral or COVID, because silver will kill all your natural good bacteria. It is a non-selective antibiotic. If you got a bacterial infection, you got strep, hell yeah, silver. But don't do silver. It will make things worse if it's a viral infection. You want a huge amount of copious bacteria coating everything, because that will kill the viruses. All right, Kim says, if you take 1,000 of vitamin C a day, is that enough? No. So 1,000 maybe for prevention, maybe. But if you really think you got something going on, I would do the 5,000 loading dose, 1,000 per hour. So, and at that dose, you're not getting diarrhea, or you shouldn't get diarrhea. But if you're fighting off the world's deadliest virus and you get diarrhea, it might be worth a little diarrhea to not get that. Maybe. But just understand, as we wrap this up, understand, everybody is going to get exposed to coronavirus. Everybody. But not just once. That's the most insane prophecy ever, that it's just gonna like randomly come through. Like, it's gonna be like Jeff, the shitty boyfriend, right? Yeah, he'll make his way through your friends, you know, but no one's gonna go back to Jeff because he stole the credit cards and, you know, cheated on you. This is something that you are gonna breathe back and forth to your family, back and forth to your coworkers. It's on every surface of everything, right? It's everywhere. So your only real defense is to have a healthy immune system. So when we go back to that thing, like, why is Asians this much getting sinus or lack of taste and killing those little cells versus Americans? Well, they're probably way more hydrated from the first standpoint. They also do traditional Chinese medicine. They live in a world where you can say homeopathics cure, you can say herbs cure, you can say they treat things like COVID. We can't do that here. I can't say that. Get rid of my license so I can say what I want. But till then, we can't say that stuff. So, you know, what is it, like white people problems, right? Is that what we have? We got loss of smell is white people problems. So, even when we look at young kids that, you know, like, why does America have children that get infected? Well, when you look at the children that got infected or that died, they had comorbidities. And then it wasn't so shocking. The same as we saw the research from every other country, right? So, I'm definitely not telling you what to do. I'm not telling you how to do it. I'm not telling you how to feel about this. Everybody should do what they feel they should do. Right? Wear 20 masks. Wear no mask. Protect people. Don't protect people. But don't think people that wear masks are superheroes saving the world, and people who don't are murderers trying to kill everybody. That's where you're going to end up screwing up stuff. The Super Bowl, every commercial was like, we're a happy people, everybody's come together, you know, let's just stop fighting and being divisive. That's really where you should be with this. Because the more polarized you get on these expectations of what to do and how to do it, I don't know if you listen to scientists, but listening to scientists and researchers, ever since the very beginning of this, is a bunch of, we just don't know, we don't know what the right thing to do is, we don't know what the right this is, nothing. But if you watch the news, it's holy crap, we're all going to die. But if you remember, we were all going to die from measles before COVID came. And then now nobody cares about measles. So, there should be a message in here for us to stop living in constant fear and stop using fear as a way to be divisive towards others, right? So, I hope that makes sense. I hope that does. All right, looking through the rest of this here. Please feel free for you guys that watch this offline to post questions too. I'll try to pay attention to answer some of those. Thank you guys for joining. Now next week, I've done a good job being single. I got one more week to stay single until Valentine's Day is over. Let my heart heal. But I want to do a show on healthy boundaries. We might have a good guest. Might have a couple guests come on. But I want to do a show where we talk about healthy boundaries, trauma responses, triggers. They're one of my favorite pictures, absolute favorite pictures about relationship, is you have a cactus and a balloon. In one relationship, the balloon has all these band-aids all over it. And the cactus is happy, and the balloon keeps getting hurt. The second picture is the cactus takes and prunes all its own thorns off. And now the cactus and the balloon get to be in a healthy, happy relationship. So, I want to talk about kind of and explore how we can identify our own thorns and how we can prune our own thorns to have better, healthier, and happier relationships. And believe me, I'm no expert. I'm a silver fox, and I'm still trying to figure this stuff out. So, none of us have this figured out very well. I am so in tune, and I love people that post all these really meaningful kind of memes in a world of just bullshit. Like, I like that. Like, I attune to that. Like, it's so meaningful. And I wish I would have been that person in my 20s. Holy crap. But I don't think we can really get to that point until we've been annihilated, until we've been utterly destroyed. Otherwise, we just let status quo take the wheel and things work out. So, for episode 186, I want to kind of talk about healthy boundaries, self-pruning, ways that we can better identify our toxic traits, our trauma responses, our triggers, and how we can be more effective in relationships. So, I hope you guys join me, and I hope you guys enjoyed this 3-part series on COVID. And I don't think we started any fights, so that's pretty good. All right, love you guys. Thank you for joining me tonight. I really appreciate it. All right, bye y'all.